that sound loud at all?
Say something else.
Hi, my name is Catherine. I work for Smart Commute. Rest in peace, ETRP.
It's not loud, it's just a little distorted. Maybe if you moved your face a little closer, I don't know, but it might be awkward.
I'm in my headphones. I'm
It's
in a
fine.
different room than I normally am in. Oops.
No, it's not loud in the background. It just sounds a little echoey. I think that's what it is.
Okay, I wonder, oh, it might be because I'm in the kitchen. Is it terrible?
No, it's not terrible.
Okay, otherwise I'll boot Dale or I'll go outside maybe, although receptivity problems, but okay. I just have a lot of fans going and it's still cold enough to run our whole house fan, so I'd like to keep running it. I just didn't want it to be distracting of the meeting.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, I'm gonna hop off again and then I'll hop on again in a bit. Or maybe I'll just mute myself and
yeah, people are already trying to get on and I'm not letting them on, so
that's funny. All right, cool. Thanks for verifying. I just want someone else to hear it because I don't hear anything on my end. So I won't have a clock chiming next to me, but yeah, I guess I will be a little bit echoey. See my chores chart in the background.
Oh, fancy.
Cool.
I'm just gonna eat my breakfast.
All right, I'm just ready, I guess, for whatever happens. I'm not sure that Karen's gonna throw anything at me, and if she throws ETRP at you, I think that would be fine. You could very easily and probably even better than me talk about it. So I will be, but I'll be ready. I have to get off at 8:15 now.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know what the plan is. She hasn't told me. So
okay, cool. See you in a bit.
Cool.
Karen, is that you?
That's me, Jean. How are you?
Well, I'm good. I'm here.
Good. I'm glad to know that. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I apologize. It has been ridiculous. For a semi-retired guy, I'm pretty damn busy,
That's what keeps you young, Jean.
I guess. You've been busy with the commission, huh?
Been pretty busy. Interesting times, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We'll have to go have coffee again.
Yeah, got a couple things I want to talk to you about. So Ben, you're here. I can be a lobbyist now, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have a pretty good agenda today. We're expecting quite a few people and some very good presentations. So I'm glad you could join us.
Good.
Morning, Karen. Can you hear me? I'm trying to switch over to earbuds.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, good morning. I
And-
see some staff checking in. Senator Hickenlooper's office. I see Andreas. Lots of people. Perfect.
Whenever you're ready, Chair, is great.
All right, let's go ahead and get started because we do have a pretty full agenda this morning. So we'll go ahead and open up the July 29th NATA meeting. And can we go ahead and start with approval of the June 24th minutes?
Looking for a motion from your representatives on NATA. Looks like Joan has her hand up.
Good morning. I move that we approve the agenda or the minutes.
Thank you,
I'm
Joan.
sorry.
I'm trying to see here. Let's see. Do I see any other hands? I just need a sec.
I'll second that motion.
Is that Malcolm?
Yes.
Thanks, Malcolm. All right, we've got minutes, motion in a second. Anyone opposed? I don't see any hands up, so we'll go ahead and accept the minutes. And let's go ahead and move into the treasurer's quarterly report.
I'm not sure if Anita, if Mayor Sites is on. There's been no changes from the last time. We've had no new expenses and no new deposits. So the cash balance for NATA is $9,405.54. I think it just takes a motion to accept.
Okay, can we go ahead and get a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
Move for approval.
Is that Joe?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Second,
Can I get a-
Joan.
Thank you, Joan. Anyone opposed? I don't see any hands, so we'll go ahead and accept the treasurer's report. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the announcement of advancing Adams Transportation Plan survey reminder. Is this what you sent last night? I think I saw it briefly.
Yes, I'm wondering if you'd like to read that, Chair.
Yeah, let me get in there again. There we go. All right, so this is the announcement that I have. Adams County continues to develop updates to its comprehensive transportation and parks, open spaces, and trails plans with completion scheduled early next year. Adams County invites all stakeholders to visit our booth at the Adams County Fair, August 4th through the 8th, to get more information, ask questions, and provide input. And then they have a website here. Maybe we can put the link in the chat box, and then you can take the most recent survey providing comments and review previously developed material. And that is the announcement that I have from that. And let's see, there's some comments maybe in the chat. I don't see any comments. Looks like there's the link for the survey that Chris is putting in the chat. So it's adcogov.org/advancing-Adams. Any questions about that? I don't really have any answers if you do have any questions, but maybe Chris does. All right, I don't see any, so we'll keep moving forward. And so let's look at the draft revised NATA mission statement. And so we had a pretty good discussion about this during our SPC meeting, as well as a lot of input from the group as a whole. So here's the revised version of that, it looks like. I don't know if anybody, Karen or Carson wants to talk about just what we added in, the highlights there.
Carson, I'll throw that to you. You've been the scribe on this.
Sure. Mostly we just massaged the language here a little bit and added some inputs like multimodal and quality of life, and some focus on equity around moving all people. So those are some of the changes that we made, and I think we'll let people take a look at that, and then we'll move on to the shared values statements as well.
So looking at this statement, does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns about what you see up there? It was a lot of really great ideas, and I think this does a pretty good job of capturing what we were really trying to get across.
I like it.
All right, I see a couple hands. So Malcolm's good. I see Julie and then Anita.
Yeah, really, I just wanted to speak to the conversation that we had during SPC. I think it was a lot of great ideas that were incorporated in this statement. So thank you, everybody who helped work on this. And I mean, really focusing on equity. We were talking about how we include this in here, and I think that this was a great add in addition to this statement. Yeah, definitely love our new mission statement. I think it really hits home the work that we're actually trying to accomplish.
Thank you, Julie. Appreciate those comments. Anita, go ahead.
Hi. So being part of the SPC and the last look at this, I know that word change to go to enhance sustainable was a good change, but I thought there was some desire to then somewhere else highlight environmental, like basically greenhouse gas and air quality concerns, so that we didn't fully lose that that portion of the motivation in the mission statement, right? Because sustainable could mean a lot of things. And when we call out what some of those goals are and we don't call out others, and then, you know, not having seen, and I apologize, I did not look at what the next bullet statements are. As long as it's called out somewhere, I'm okay with it, but I didn't want that to be lost, that we do still, is it here? Thank you.
Yeah, I see Carson shaking his head for the shared values part of it. And so that's what we see now on the screen. And as you can see, there's quite a bit that we added here.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I don't know, Anita, can you see all that on there?
I can, thank you. I'm on an iPad, so I have it, so.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, take a look at that and see if it fits with what you're thinking about here. And then
it does. The only thing it doesn't is agnostic on is greenhouse gas emissions. It talks about air quality and non-renewable fuels, but misses the GHG.
Okay. Let's go to Jean real quick and then see what we can come up with on that.
In the first part of that statement, the one that you showed at the beginning, after the word, I think it doesn't go far enough into say where it says lobby. I would like to suggest that we add both state, front range, and national lobby, because if we don't start looking at going all the way to the federal, we need to make sure that all funding and priorities are met in this region.
Thanks, Jean. And I see Carson, you went back to this page, so I guess we're looking at that to see. And I see actually Andreas's hand up, so maybe. he can
Absolutely.
add.
You know, I just wanted to say, you know, more than welcome, you know, all of the comments that were just made regarding reaching out to the federal government. We are lucky with Senator Hickenlooper. He served on the Transportation Committee, which gives us oversight authority over the Department of Transportation. It also gives us an inside scoop on kind of what makes a successful grant, for example, grant application to the Department of Transportation. So I am here to be a forceful advocate on your behalf in our office to ensure you're getting everything that you need.
Thank you. And I also see Jeremy's logged on now from Perlmutter's office. I just saw him a minute ago. And so I do see Deborah's got some comments in the chat here that we could maybe add. In the last bullet, could we add greenhouse gases after non-renewable fuels? And I wonder if that might be the same place as well that we, if we wanted to specify state, you know, local, state, and national level. I don't know. Anita, is your hand still up? Did you have some other thoughts about it?
No, let me take that hand down. Sorry.
No worries. And what do we think overall? I don't see any other hands, but what does anyone else think here?
I think on the lobbying, it's kind of understood that we lobby at all different levels.
Yeah, and I think that was, we did discuss that. Joan, I see your hand up.
Thank you, and I apologize that I wasn't at the SPC meeting to have a more input on this. I applaud the efforts. I think that is well done, but I do agree that we need to be specific and let the governments, local, state, and federal, know that we are going to go after their money, that we are interested in it, to fulfill everything that the statement says, not just one particular area. So I do think it needs to be in the statement, in the lobbying part. Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, so what do we think then overall? Are we going maybe with this last bullet point? Is that where we're thinking maybe it fits the best for both of those ideas? I see Carson shaking his head yes. Anybody else thoughts on that? Andreas, is your hand still up or did you have a new comment? Oh,
So
there you
sorry,
go.
no,
Thank
it was
you.
just still up.
Well, maybe we can add that in and then I guess send it out to the group if there's any other questions. Otherwise, it seems like everybody's pretty good with everything else. So maybe just specifying those two areas. Perfect. All right, let's move on then. Carson, do you have what you need for that?
I think so. I think the lobbying statement might go before, if I'm not mistaken, but after this lobby statement, the mission statement, but maybe we'll make those changes and can send it around to the group if we're in consensus that those are the two additions that we'd like, that and greenhouse gas in the final statement on the next page.
Okay.
Once we get an
Wonderful.
approval for this, we'll change it on the NATA website and we'll change it in the leave behind document that we have. So let's bring it back next month just for final approval, if that's all right, Chair, before we make those changes to the website and to the lobbying document that we have. Will that work?
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your comments on that. And thanks, Carson, for capturing all these thoughts and sticking them in there the right way and in the right place. All right, let's keep going. So we've got smart commute updates. So we've got Karen, Carson, and Catherine.
Yep. I'll start with the Employer Traffic Reduction Program, ETRP, that we brought you a whole lot of information on in the last 6 months. And as a TMO, Smart Commute was part of a group of the Way to Go group out of DRCOG, who worked to influence this rule so that it was a rule that could be achieved. that could be rolled out that we could help with. And I'll turn it over to Catherine to give you a quick update on how this fell apart at the CDPHE level. And then I'll just make a statement. So Catherine, are you on? I think you're on.
Yes, I am. Thanks, Karen. This, the dismissal occurred over basically a 7-day period for us. We had been working through the specifics on the rule language, and we at Smart Commute, along with all the TMAs, have been advocating for a rule that's as fair as possible and also as achievable as possible, recognizing that this would have brought good, and we didn't want to overly penalize people unjustly. So that had been really what we'd been working with the Air Pollution Control Division on. We had actually been meeting with them on a Thursday, and the following Monday, we had a last minute meeting convened by the APCD staff, and they announced that they had removed from the rule the requirements to meet an SOV drive rate, as well as submitting an E-trip plan. So on that Monday, those have been removed. And then by the following Thursday, we had another emergency meeting convened, and the APCD staff announced that they had called for the dismissal of the E-trip rule. So it would not go before the Air Quality Control Commission any longer. And it would return us to the status quo, which has always been essentially voluntary E-trip plans. We've not called them or specified them as E-trip plans here at Smart Commute. We've called them other things, but that is essentially what we've always been doing with employers and always provided to employers. So we've been quite busy announcing to all of the employers that have been proactive on wanting to engage and prepare for this role about this change. And there's a few employers that we're going to continue working with to evaluate the data. That was going to be something that would be very new for us, is looking at a rich data set and evaluating it in the same way that the Air Pollution Control Division would have called us to do. So we're going to do that with a number of employers. So we'll have a good baseline for those employers so they can understand the gap if this rule ever does come back into effect. So that's our target now. And then of course, returning to the voluntary status quo with companies that do want to support commutes, that want to reduce their contribution to ozone and greenhouse gas. We have a number of those employers in our area that we've been working with for many years on those goals. So that's essentially what went down. We've put a lot of time into this as an organization over the last year and more. So it was quite sudden for all of us who had been advocating for just small relaxing of the E-trip rules that they had drafted to suddenly have it completely scrapped. It was surprising for us.
I would comment as well that it's really disappointing because it was an opportunity to make a change that would help us understand the impact of single occupancy vehicles on greenhouse gas emissions. We want to thank all the people who worked with us, employers and communities who worked with us in our early outreach to put together a program for them that would meet some of these goals. In closing, I'd like to say, Colorado will be downgraded to severe noncompliance with the EPA's ozone standards. And we continue to have significant challenges with air pollution in general, greenhouse gas and ozone. And the EPA downgrade may have further regulatory implications, and there probably will be further attention on this issue as a result of this recent action and the upcoming EPA downgrade. So this is something that's not going to go away. And we continue as TMOs at the Way to Go level and the North Front Range to talk about what's the next step, because I think something will be mandated because of this severe non-compliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine and Karen, for your comments on that and presentation. I know that was a surprise for many of us. We got the news right before right at the beginning of the DRCOG meeting last week. So still a lot of questions. I see Joan, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. I am very disappointed as well that this was dismissed. We were just starting to engage with local businesses on greenhouse gas reductions for their employees, and this was a huge supportive program for us. And now since it's on the volunteer basis, we have too many businesses saying this is not our issue, it's a government issue. So I'm just disappointed that we don't have this backup, and I'm really glad, Karen, to hear that we are going to continue to work on this and push it. Thanks.
Thanks, Joan. And I see Troy, your hand is up.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Karen, just would you comment a little bit about the July 19th note from Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment? The way I read that, and there's a lot of gobbledygook in there, but it doesn't sound like it's lost and gone forever, as far as, you know, maybe a second effort or something of that nature. You know what I'm referring to?
I think you might be referring to the withdrawal of proposal. Is that the letter you're talking about? No.
I don't. It says statement of CDPHE concerning revision to employee traffic reduction program proposal. So maybe that is one and the same.
Oh, yeah, no.
That was that was the iteration prior to them withdrawing. So before they withdrew the rule entirely, they had revised it to remove that e-trip requirement and the SOV drive rate requirement, and more encourage people to do e-trip plans. And they were going to continue to require data collection. And that was going to be what we would move forward on before they scrapped the entire rule. So that statement kind of outlines some of their intent, but it is a little outdated.
Okay.
They just released a statement, and we're going to be putting that out in our newsletter, to our newsletter base, I should say, in an email blast that specifically pertains to e-trip and its dismissal.
Okay, well, that explains my confusion. Appreciate the answer.
We were all confused because it was rapid fire. First, we thought they're pulling out some of the components. Then we thought they're pulling out all of them except the initial survey of employers to get a baseline. And then the next thing we knew, we got this withdrawal of proposal notice from the Air Quality Control Commission. And in essence, it just means it's gone away completely with no regulation necessary. But I do think it will come back. We continue at the Dr. Cog Way to Go level to talk about this amongst ourselves. We have a meeting scheduled next week with some of the chambers of commerce to talk about how are we going to meet this regulation, this EPA downgrade for non-attainment. What can we do voluntarily as employers and organizations in Colorado to start toward making some efforts at reducing greenhouse gas before the hammer comes down from the EPA and says this is what you're going to do, which could be all kinds of things like taxation and regulations that are very difficult to meet. So we got our eye on it, but it's a moving target for sure.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. I think, like you said, it will come back. I think for us, Joan, it's too bad to hear that some of your businesses are digging in, but I think for us, a lot of our businesses here in Thornton, you know, we're already sort of bringing forward their own sustainable plans, and I feel like most people are going in that direction. So hopefully this will just give them a little more time without the fear of the big penalties. But I think we all know it's going to keep going forward, so we'll just keep an eye out. Thanks for that. Let's go ahead and move to the 3 Telework well-being video links.
And I'm going to turn the next 2 pieces over to Carson.
Sure. We have created these 3. We've talked about them before. Teleworking videos via a grant, Can Do Colorado grant, focused on mental health, physical health, and ergonomics of teleworking. And just some quick tips and tricks from a physical therapist who specializes in this area about those 3 topics. And we've got those 3 videos, and we partnered with the Broomfield Chamber on those videos to get them out to their folks, but we're going to share them here. I just put a link in the chat to all 3 of the videos in a playlist on our YouTube channel. Very easy to share that way, but we would encourage you to go on there and check them out. There's some really good tips, and it'll make you feel like, if you're like me, very bad about how you're sitting all day. So should be pretty helpful. And please feel free to share those as wide as you'd like, and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Carson. I know that was it was a fun video to watch, and I'm glad that she's a physical therapist, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's good to have that involvement, given we are all sitting probably not the right way every day, especially now.
Yeah, there's some good tips in there, especially I think on the mental health side too, with just some small things here and there to help us kind of refocus ourselves throughout the day.
Yeah, great. I don't see any hands up, so I think you can keep going.
Good deal. I'll move on to community outreach events. Just a quick reminder that we're about halfway through, I guess, our community outreach events throughout the summer. We've been participating in a lot of great events throughout the end of July here. The Brighton City Barbecue was an amazing event. And so was the Full Moon Bike Ride just a few days, or just the next day. And North Glen's holding their Full Moon Bike Rides every month here. We have a shot of Catherine's kiddo here at the North Glen Full Moon Ride. It's too cute not to post. So we've been having great engagement at those events and excited to see people out on their bikes and participate in some of our engagement activities that we're doing. We have a few great things coming up, like Broomfield National Night Out and the Thornton Bike Rodeo Extravaganza in early August, and then continuing throughout the rest of the summer. One thing I'll point out is Bike to Work Day is September 22nd. It's sneaking up on us here. So if you have questions about that, please let me know. We're excited to host some stations with jurisdictions throughout our region. And then just one fun slide with some shots here of us at outreach events over the last few weeks. Here's Catherine on our e-bike from our e-bike program you'll hear about here in a few minutes. A shot from the Brighton Full Moon Bike Ride last week, the North Glen Ride a couple of weeks ago, and then the Brighton City Barbecue with an awesome turnout as well. That's it.
Yeah, it's nice to have events to go to again. I know our police department is looking forward to you guys being there for their bike rodeo, which I guess is just in another week, really, week and a half. All right, thanks so much for that presentation. We can go ahead and keep moving on to the e-bikes grant program presentation.
Thanks, Jessica. This is Jean with Smart Commute, and I'm really happy to join all of you this morning to talk a little bit about our electric bike program. Smart Commute's program is one of 7 programs that are funded throughout the state through the Colorado Energy Office's Can Do Colorado e-bike initiative. And this statewide initiative really is focused on making electric bikes an accessible mobility option for low-income workers. And Smart Commute's program will provide 35 Adams and Broomfield residents the opportunity to try e-biking to see if it's a good fit for them to use for their primary trips around town, as well as primarily to get to work. Smart Commute's program is also built in a lot of flexibility because we're using a loan-to-own model. And this gives participants 90 days to try out e-biking before they make a long-term commitment. So in exchange for trying e-biking out and agreeing to provide trip data through that time frame, they get a brand new e-bike as well as a boatload of accessories, including a very robust lock set, a light set, a set of panniers or bike bags, a helmet, a floor pump, a flat tire sealant, as well as some other things that are used to make e-biking as comfortable as possible. Now we're deploying our 35 e-bikes in 2 different phases, 10 e-bikes this summer, as well as an additional 25 e-bikes later this year. And I'll talk about that in a slide coming up here in a moment. But first I want to talk a little bit about the 90-day loan period. So after 90 days, if a participant decides that e-biking is not for them, it's just not something that they want to do, they simply return the e-bike and the accessories so that we can deploy that to another participant. If a participant decides to stay in the program and they commit to continuing to use it as their primary mode of transportation and providing the trip data, then we give them the e-bike and the accessories through the duration of the program, and it's theirs to keep. Now, in listing the parameters on this particular slide for participants, I'd just like to highlight a couple of things. So first of all, the funds that are being used to address, or I guess to fund the Can Do Colorado e-bike initiative is through the Weatherization Access Program, or WAP. And this WAP program is available to individuals who make less than $31,000 annually, which is one of our primary criterion to participate in this program. So the WAP program provides home energy efficiency improvements such as furnace replacements, air sealing, insulation, LED lights, and now e-bikes. So the other thing I wanted to mention on this slide is about the $250 refundable deposit. Now, putting this program together, we really thought that it was important to get some buy-in from participants in the program. And so that's one reason that we required the $250 deposit. We do understand that this deposit might be cost prohibitive for some participants. And so we have been actively going out and pursuing funds to defray those costs. And we have been fortunate enough to get a grant, actually a community service block grant through the Colorado Community Action Association for the first 10 e-bikes. So the first 10 e-bikes, their deposits have already been paid for through this grant. And then we're again continuing to actively pursue other funding opportunities to defray those costs for the remaining 25 participants. Now, for participants who do pay the deposit, but they opt out of the program after the first 90 days, they will receive that deposit back, minus any funds that are needed to make major repairs or to replace lost accessories. If a participant that pays a deposit continues throughout the program, they'll get their security deposit back at the end of that time frame. So next slide. So in looking at these line items that we'll promote and test through our e-bike program, I think the best way to summarize this particular slide is that we're looking to see if e-biking is truly a legitimate commute option that's open to everyone in a suburban environment. So with that, Carson, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, we do have 2 phases of deployments. Again, the first 10 e-bikes this summer, the other remaining 25 a little bit later this year. And one of the primary reasons for this is that the first 10 e-bikes are being paid for entirely using the Colorado Energy Office's funds, or the WAP funds that I mentioned before. The second phase of deployed e-bikes is going to be paid through with a combination of Smart Commute Local Match, CEO funds, as well as leveraging the federal funds under our 144th I-25 DRCOG grant. So because of this, we'll go out for a competitive bid process to be able to get the prospective proposals coming in to get the best price and the best program for the remaining 25 e-bikes. The other thing I want to mention about phase 2 that I think is really important to highlight is that we do have budget for up to 5 recumbent e-bikes or e-trikes for adaptive use. When we were going through the application process with the Colorado Energy Office, they noted that one of the strongest aspects of our application was that we were the only application that provided for adaptive use equipment. And so that being a very strong point, it is central to our phase 2 deployment of the e-bikes. Next slide. So I think this is probably the funnest slide out of the 5-slide deck that we have for this presentation. It does show the general locations of where our first 10 participants live and where they work. We do have a priority up at 144th and I-25 to provide the e-bikes for the shift workers that are a part of our DRCOG grant. But as you can see from this map, we also do have several participants that work throughout the Smart Commute service area as well. The 2 photos show our participants from our first 2 trainings. We have a pretty simple process, but it is actually very comprehensive as well. If people are interested in the e-bike program, they go to the Smart Commute website and click on our e-bike webpage. And at that point, they have an application that they can download and submit to us, including income verification because of the WAP funds. Once they submit an application and it's deemed complete, Then we set up an orientation process where we talk about the application and the agreements that are in the packet that they signed. The 3 agreements that they need to sign is a participation agreement, a liability waiver, and a photo release. And then the rest of the application really talks about basic information as well as asking questions to help a prospective user kind of think a little bit about, well, you know, what kind of road would I be interested in traveling on? Would I travel on State Highway 7? Would I be willing to ride up Washington Street? And so we use the application and that whole process in the orientation session to really flesh out how they feel about e-biking and trying it on a trial basis. The other thing I might mention is with the adaptive use, one of the orientations led to a participant that's on this map waiting for phase 2 because some adaptive equipment would be much more feasible for this person to have a successful trial basis. And one of the things we want to make sure that we do is that we want a successful program. So the orientation process is really valuable from that aspect. And then once they get through that, their application is then going through the process through Smart Commute. I make recommendations and then we approve participants. And at that point, they go into an e-bike operation safety and NREL app training session. And these 2 training sessions and the subsequent ones last about 3 hours. And I mention this because one of the other strengths of Smart Commute's application was that we had a very robust outreach effort, not only to prospective users, but also to the participants. So in training number 2, we actually invited all of the participants in training number 1 to come back with their e-bikes at the tail end of the training and talk through with James and Ben, who are from Giant of Centennial, to answer any questions about e-bike operations, noises that they're hearing because of the motor and those types of things. And so at least on a weekly basis, we're reaching out to these participants to engage them to make sure that they don't have any issues, and also to offer opportunities for them to participate in group rides, such as our Bike to Summer initiative. So next slide. So in this final slide, this kind of just highlights what we're doing right now. We continue to sift through prospective users to get them in the application pipeline. We're writing the ad package for phase 2 deployment. And we're also doing a lot of outreach to local agencies, nonprofits, and communities. So tomorrow I'm going to Broomfield's Fish Family Fun Fest to do a presentation about the e-bikes. Of course, we were there as the picture notes at the Bright and Full Moon bike ride last week. And next week I have a couple of meetings with some affordable housing communities. So if any of your organizations are interested in an e-bike presentation, please don't hesitate to get a hold of me or Karen and we'll set something up. Thanks, that ends my presentation. So.
Thank you, Jean. I appreciate all that information. It's I know you've been waiting to present that to us for a while, so it's great to hear the opportunities and the options and the different types of bikes, especially the adaptive bikes. I see Jean, your hand is up.
Yeah, yes, I'm going to get on my safety stool here. One thing that I'm seeing is a lot of bicyclists don't realize that being seen is half of their safety. I'm hoping, Jean, that you are telling people to be visible when they're on their bike by either having the fluorescent yellow green shirts or orange or something of that color that causes the bicyclist to stand out. I've also seen where there are reflective little tubes that you can put on the spokes of bikes that reflect light. And I think that would be very helpful safety-wise for people in telling them about that type of stuff. Bike safety, we've had a couple of people in the region die recently. And we need to press that using a bike needs to go along with safety, being visible and following the rules of the road.
Those are all great points, Jean. And one of the reasons that our training sessions are 3 hours long is because we do go and have a very extensive session about road safety and rules of the road. And I think one of the positive things that have come out of that is that all of the participants come back and say, you know, when we're out and we're driving, we actually look for cyclists now. And so they're also teaching their kids. I went over to one of the participants' house the other day to help them with some e-bike issues. And, you know, I was talking with all of their kids about bike safety. And so I think through this program and the other programs throughout the state, people, at least that are active in this program or have connections to it, will hopefully also start to be a lot more aware of cyclists. Because one of the first things we tell them in the training is, don't assume that anybody in a car sees you. So make sure that you use care and pay extra attention to everyone around you, and so that they can have these good and safe habits traveling in traffic. So yeah, but definitely all of your points are well taken as well. So.
All right, any other comments? Anita.
So I noticed that a good chunk of the folks on your map worked at Amazon. Has there been any talk? This is like a good example of where the e-trip program could have maybe helped scale this up. Is there any comments about perhaps getting business scholarships to help offset that $250 buy-in cost to even pay a portion of it? It's a very large amount of money for folks that are making less than $31,000 a year.
Yes, we definitely understand that it could be cost prohibitive, which is why we're very happy to have the community service block grant to cover 10 of those deposits. And again, we do have several other actually businesses and some agencies that are interested in maybe helping defray the cost of those going forward. And yes, when we go out to the businesses, we mention the deposits, and of course, we're always open if they would like to sponsor some scholarships for some of our participants.
Does that help, Anita?
It does.
Any other comments or questions?
Jean, you might mention the work that you do with Amazon in some of the incentives and support that they give their employees with the Flex Ride.
Sure. So yeah, we do, as Karen just mentioned, we do a lot with Amazon. We're there during their breaks, and if you all have some interest in how Amazon functions, they have 2 shifts. So they have a day shift and a night shift. And Smart Commute, we go out there during both shifts on their lunches. So sometimes we're out there at 11 o'clock at night until 1 o'clock in the morning, because we understand that in order to help people find good transportation options, we need to go to where they're at. And so I think through this, our ability to be able to meet employees up at 144th and I-25 where they're at, this has 2 benefits. Number one, I'll just go back to the e-bike application again. This was again another thing that CEO really saw as a strength that we have good working relationships with our businesses, particularly up at 144th and I-25. And with Amazon, we've particularly been able to offer a lot of support for them. So for instance, with the 144th I-25 Flex Ride service, if we have any associates that work at Amazon that come to work late, all I have to do is send an email to HR with the name of the associates that were late for work because of the bus, and they don't get docked. So we've gotten to the point where we have such a strong relationship with Amazon that we're able to help them on that type of a scale. And again, it goes back to these shift workers that need accessible transportation, and Smart Commute is that good partner that offers that. And that has led to the ability for them to offer transit passes, to offer other incentives for workers to be able to participate in these programs. And HR will even allow some leniency and an associate's shift work if they ride our shuttle or they participate in the e-bike program or any of the other programs that they decide to participate in. So Karen, is there something else in particular that you wanted me to mention? But I can certainly talk more about that, but we offer that for anyone that works up at, not just works up, but has a business at 144th and I-25 too. It's not just Amazon, so.
That's great, Jean. And just wanted to touch on, Amazon has become a partner. The other big partner up there is St. Anthony North Health Campus, and we do in-service for them as well. But yeah, you touched on the really interesting things. I think the fact that they provide transit passes. We've tried to get them to do eco passes. They're not there yet, but they have a substantial amount of transit passes that they've worked with Jean to provide their transit riders. So thanks, Jean. That was really what I was looking for. Thanks.
Okay.
Very exciting. I love hearing about that work. Thank you, Jean.
Sure.
And I think that's a great segue into the next topic, which is the RTD conversation.
Madam
So
Chair.
we start off with director's reports. Vince, go for it.
Thanks. I'll start. I'm going to have, I think Director Davis is going to talk about the reimagine process a little bit. And I think Deborah Johnson's in. I might have her talk just briefly about the fair and equity study that's going on. But I'd like to talk a little bit about the N-Line, one of my favorite topics. Just a heads up, there's an N-Line public meeting tonight at 5 p.m. I think it's a Microsoft Teams meeting, but I can send people a link if they want to participate. I asked for some ridership numbers from Dave Jensen, our rail guy, and interesting to see that N-Line ridership has been slowly creeping up. So January of this year, we had 44,000 riders, and June of this year, we've got 61,000, almost 62,000 boardings per month. So we're getting up there, which is good. I don't know what the comparison is to the G line for June, but I'm going to find that out. We struggled early in the year and had some issues with reliability. And of course, when that happens, it's problematic to get people coming back. But it looks like every month we've been slowly creeping up in numbers, and hopefully we keep that trend going. That's all I have for the N-Line, and I'll turn it over to other directors.
Thanks, Director Busick. This is Director Davidson. I'll just briefly comment on the RTD process. I know Fair Study was here, and thank you to Ms. Johnson for joining us here to discuss that. The Reimagine RTD process is where we are in this. I think we've mentioned before that earlier this year, the board did approve the guiding principles. These are the principles from which all of the actual operational strategies that the Reimagine group will be recommending to RTD come from. And those principles were mobility, equity, financial, partnership, workforce, and sustainability. So what's been going on since the board approved those guiding principles is that the advisory committee and the technical working group for Reimagine have been working on the actual strategies for how to best achieve those guiding principles. There's discussions going around how to manage workforce challenges, for example. We've had participation on the Reimagine advisory committee from represented employees. There's been discussion about how to address first and last mile. In this last meeting, we started to get a look at some of the strategies that the technical working group has been putting together, and there was a particularly healthy debate, I think, about land use and whether land use should play a key role in both first and last mile, but also in transit in general. You know, should we be ensuring that land is maybe less friendly to single occupancy vehicles and more conducive to travel, or is that not really the right way to incent an increased use in transit into the future? So there was some debate and discussion around that topic in particular, things like parking, mobility as a service. These are the types of things that are being discussed. There was some feedback gathered by the advisory group on July 15th. And where we are right now, we also got a presentation from Doug McLeod, the CFO of RTD, talking about where we are financially as an organization. And throughout the remainder of the summer here, the technical working group and some of the folks involved in Reimagine will be combining the feedback on the particular strategies to accomplish those guiding principles with the fiscal and financial reality, and coming with some additional, more refined proposed recommendations. And that next meeting is going to be in September. September 8th will be the technical working group's next meeting, and September 9th will be the next time that the advisory committee gets together to really look at the intersection of strategies for the future and financial and fiscal sustainability. And all of this is working towards the end of this year, early next year, developing a mobility plan of the future. And something I'm certainly very interested to see is how the recommendations from Reimagine and what that mobility plan look like are going to intersect with the strategic plan that senior leadership and the board of directors at RTD are completing, and how that may intersect with the recommendations that we have recently received from the accountability committee. So that's where we are with Reimagine. I'm happy to open the floor here to discuss the FAIR study, which I understand Ms. Johnson is here. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. If I could,
go ahead, Vince.
I'm sorry, if I could just revise my report just briefly. So I referred to Dave Jensen as the rail guy, and he is, of course, but his technical title is the Assistant General Manager of Rail Operations. And I sent Dave an email just early this morning, and he's already responded. I didn't see that, but comparison to the G line, I like to compare the N line to the G line simply because the G line had been open for a year before the N line, and has, you know, got some good numbers that are, you know, good comparisons, I think, for the N line. And they opened not during a pandemic, and they've had some pretty strong ridership. But for June, for example, boardings between Monday and Thursday on the G line, 27,000, on the N line, 28,000. So we're neck and neck with the G line. So I'm hopeful that the N, like I said before, the N line numbers continue to improve. And I'm sorry, Director Whitmore, I think I cut you off, but go ahead.
Oh, no worries. I'm just teeing things up for Deborah, so you're next up. But as you can tell, we're pretty busy with a lot of important projects, and woven through this is the accountability committee report, and then our response to the accountability committee that Julie served on for about the last year or so. We got that report on the 20th of this month, and we're working feverishly with staff and the board to answer and opine on their recommendations. And matter of fact, it looks like, and Deborah, you can interrupt me if I'm giving some false information, but our plan after 3 of us meeting earlier in the week is that the draft responses from our staff will go out to the board on the 3rd of August. And we have until the 9th to give our input back on those recommendations, and then craft our final answer, which we probably do around the 31st of August. And then we have to have our response to the accountability committee submitted by the 3rd of September. So a lot of moving parts for Deborah. I'm glad she has the energy level that she has, and the tolerance and all that to work through many of these processes. So with that, I'm sure you all would prefer to hear from Deborah. So it's yours, Deborah.
Thank you very much, Director Whitmore, and good morning to all of you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. Just some points of clarification to Director Whitmore's comments. What we intend to do is basically have a discussion with the board on August 17th That's when we will be discussing collectively any feedback the board may have to the responses my team and I have assembled relative to the 43 recommendations set forward in the Accountability Committee final report, in which we received on Tuesday, July 20th. At the meeting of the 17th, if there's additional conversations that need to ensue relative to either recommendations and staff's responses, we endeavor to formulate those and then present to the board for their consideration and adoption on August 24th. If in fact we don't have it at that time, we do have a additional Tuesday in which we could finalize, being the 31st, with the intent of transmitting to the Accountability Committee via Dr. Cog by August 31st. So just wanted to shore that up. And then more so in reference to some comments that were raised, I, along with the board of directors and Ernest with the executive team, have been working on a strategic plan for the agency that creates alignment around strategic priorities, of which there are 4: community value, customer excellence, employee ownership, and financial success. Those for strategic plans will enable us to work towards success outcomes. And in doing so, there's a myriad of activities and tactics that the team have outlined that really will yield the success outcomes relative to those 4 strategic priorities that I outlined. There will be intersectionality because that strategic plan and those priorities should be the foundational pillars upon which decisions are made for the organization. Recognizing that the Accountability Committee has worked diligently with my coming on board, there were a lot of those elements that already were in the process, as many members of the Accountability Committee heard me talk about. So there's clear-cut intersectionality with the myriad of initiatives that we have going on. And to the point about Reimagine RTD, while we're working on the system of optimization plan optimally as we go forward, we need to do a comprehensive operational analysis that allows us to discern our transportation network. One thing's for certain that I learned as of late, RTD, unlike other transit agencies in the country that typically do a comprehensive operational analysis, usually takes place every 5 to 7 or 7 to 10 years. And the purpose of that is to factor in, are we basically taking people where they need to go? There's a myriad of different things that happen relative to development, changes in the environment, the operating environment, activity centers, businesses moving out, residential developments taking place. And since we had been in this place of building, RTD traditionally did that around the advent of rail lines coming on board. So we really haven't done a comprehensive operation analysis in the last 18 years. So when we talk about Reimagine RTD, theoretical principles that will take us to a point in time where we actually need to do a comprehensive operation analysis, and those really fall in line with what people do in the planning realm with a short-term plan and a long-range planning effort. So I just wanted to provide some clarity on that. And then last but not least, yes, there is an inline public meeting. For those of you that haven't subscribed to our newsletter specifically about the inline, I encourage you to do so. There was a newsletter that was disseminated to those that have subscribed on Thursday, July 15th, that contained the information for the inline meeting. Last but certainly not least, want to touch upon the fare study and equity analysis. I know the last time we convened, Bill Soroy did an excellent job, and I know he's on the call outlining where we are. So what we've done thus far, rounding out the month, just last week, we had a local government meeting whereby we basically provided an overview of what we were doing relative to engaging and focusing on customers and key stakeholders to shape our impending scope of work. And I reference that because it's our intent starting just next month, which is a couple of days, to formulate and do a solicitation to retain the services of a qualified subject matter expert in the realm of doing a equity analysis as it pertains to fares. And so that's the August-September timeframe that's up front, with the intent of selecting a consultant and issuing a notice to proceed in the October timeframe, October-November timeframe, and finalize the board direction for our revenue assumptions and targets. So that's where we are right now. We are on track, and I'd like to thank all of you for your participation in getting the word out. I know there has been a lot of media coverage as of late relative to the accountability recommendations, talking about, cutting fares and so forth. And as we talked about, while we endeavor to optimize our fare structure, we first have to understand what it is that we're dealing with. And I know there's been conversations relative to why are we doing this again? We have to ensure that we're looking at the system holistically and doing a fair study and equity analysis as pursuant to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. So just wanted to qualify that for everybody with the recent media reports. So with that, I will yield the floor and thank you all for your time and attention and your interest in RTD.
Thank you, Deborah. Comments or questions? Julie, I don't know if you wanted to add anything in there that you felt needed to be stated, or Julie Mullica.
No, I don't think so at this point. I think that, a lot of us are just looking forward to RTD's response, which, we got the dates for. And so I'm going to be tuning into those meetings. And then really those are the next steps. So looking forward to seeing those responses come through.
Thank you. I see Karen, your hand is up.
Thanks. I just wanted to let you know that RTD's consultant on Reimagine contacted me and asked if she could do a brainstorming session with NATA, and that would be scheduled for the next NATA meeting. I think it would be a fairly short brainstorming session, but she would like our input as an important stakeholder. And so I've got that tentatively scheduled for the August meeting, along with several other things on the agenda.
Perfect. Thank you. Anyone else? Questions? I don't see any hands. I do have two questions actually. I know that there was a concern about the bus not being, there was no service out to the Adams County Municipal Building. Has that been addressed? Does anybody know? I know our city sent a letter actually on that as well.
Let me jump in on that, Jessica. Yeah, that's not exactly true that there's no service. The stop was eliminated at the courthouse, so now there's a bit of a walk from one of three stops, either west or eastbound, to the Adams County facility. Obviously, this is not what the clientele out there is used to, and I personally am very concerned about that, and we'll be working with staff to try and see what we can do in a future run board. It was not added in the September change, but I've had a number of conversations with county and Brighton and other communities, and I've been trying to run it up the flagpole with planning and Deborah, and drag Vince into it as well. So just know, I'm going to do everything I can to see what we can do, perhaps even cooperatively with the county to get us a little bit closer to that stop. But as far as the stop being completely, or the line being completely amended, it's not quite as bad as some would make.
Oh, you went to mute towards the end. I guess then my question would be, why did we cut that stop out? Adding another distance or walking, which leads me to my next question about the first and last mile solutions, which is always the big question. So for 4 years now, we've heard a lot of conversations about it, but are there any actual solutions coming forward? And now if we're having another stop where potentially, if you have a disability or any sort of mobility challenge, having to walk any distance is going to be difficult, especially when they need to get to court. And so, potentially missing their hearing or having a challenge along the way brings up more issues. And I guess, so I don't know if those can be answered now, but I think it's important to get that stop back on for people to not have to walk any distance.
Well, I hear you. I don't know if anybody from staff or anybody else would like to comment, but yeah, you've got a half a mile walk or several hundred yards walk across Bromley Lane or down by Medical Center Drive to get up to the courthouse. So yeah, it's not ideal, but I think what had happened is we had lack of ridership during COVID. We're still dealing with driver shortages, and we had recreated some lines through Brighton after the inline opened up to give actually more frequent service as far as general service in the community. But this one went away. So you know, all I can say is I'll strive to keep working on that, and would you know, welcome any comments from staff or any other board members on that. You know, I'm one of 15 guys, so I keep pushing.
And I see Lynn had her hand up, and then Greg.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everyone. So thank you, Director Whitmore, for that update. And yes, it is concerning to Adams County, as we heard from the Chief Justice, Don Quick, out there, is that they're going to start to ramp up capacity. He will be hiring additional judges and magistrates to hold the additional court proceedings to take care of the backlog that was created by COVID, because jury trials were not being held. So we want that service to be reinstated as soon as possible. And Troy, if we haven't done so, we will write you a letter of support that you can present to the directors. I know that our staff has met with RTD staff, and we were told that the service at that stop was suspended due to lack of an access agreement, that RTD does not have an access agreement to the county justice center stop. That has not been the case for the 20 years or more that service has been provided to that facility. And as this board of NATA directors and representation of municipal officials across the NATA region have expressed in no short terms and very adamantly to RTD, RTD leadership throughout the years, that what we want is communication. And I don't think that should fall solely on the director. I don't know if there's a government communication specialist that needs to be in touch with the with each service provider, and I mean jurisdictions when I say that, but this is a disruption for our court system, for the people that work at the courts, for jurors that maybe need to get to the courts, for people that have courts, you know, cases that need to be held at the court system. The other service stop that was also happened in Adams County, and I don't know the official name, it's not so flattering, referred to as like the halfway house, which is along the frontage road along I-76 and about Dahlia Street. We're looking at service also being reinstated there. That is in the middle of nowhere, and I just don't know where those where the people go. If they need to walk down Dahlia to Commerce City to 72nd Avenue to catch bus service. So a couple of concerning stops. We appreciate your support, Director Whitmore, and we look forward to a solution sooner rather than later. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I see Deborah has her hand up, so I'm going to let her answer some of those before I move to Greg and then Malcolm.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the comments for everyone. And I recognize the frustration, and we've had this conversation numerous times relative to communication. So recognizing that the stop was eliminated probably in excess of a year ago, if it's not my misunderstanding. Our government relations officer, Michael Davies, is on the call. He, like me, is new to the organization. We are looking to set up a meeting so we can bridge this gap with communication. I don't know all the ins and outs of how this came to be in the past, but we are willing to try to help mitigate because I think there is some misunderstandings, and I don't know if they're on behalf of RTD or other parties, but as I have said before in this forum, I am here now, I accept responsibility for that, so we have to work for it in earnest and develop a solution to this problem. So with that, Michael Davies, are you able to speak on this call?
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes, sir, please go forward, thank you.
Yeah, so on this topic, and as our GM CEO Johnson mentioned, happy to engage and set up a process to have a further conversation on this, engage our service planners that certainly do know the background. I do know that you know, this is a little different, and it may just give a little background to the process. This was not just a service change. This was an entire N-line bus operations service plan, which there's a lot more that goes into the service planning of that than the regular service changes. And I know, you know, our service planners did a pretty extensive outreach process to Brighton, to Adams County we went before the Brighton courthouse, or I mean, the Brighton City Council, and did present this plan. None of the comments came back on this specific issue. So, I think there might have been just a little bit of miscommunication as we were getting that public feedback at the time. So, but with that being a little bit of background and framework around our process on this, look forward to engaging you all and being a point of contact on this and other issues as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. And if you could put your contact information in the chat, perhaps we could leverage that going forward so we can remedy this and have dialogue around this sooner rather than later. So thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to address this.
Yeah, thank you. We'll go ahead and go to Greg and then Malcolm.
Yeah, thank you for letting me speak. Commissioner Baca actually reached out to me a few weeks ago and brought this to my attention about the stop being eliminated at the courthouse. Well, I guess not eliminated, but only moved to Bromley Lane instead of where it was originally. City Brighton, we're preparing a letter of support to bring that back, and we'll be sending that to RTD very soon. But I find the comments from the RTD staff interesting that this was part of the N line plan, which I don't know why, because the N line is about 15 miles from this area. So that should have nothing to do with the N line realignment plans. So that's my challenge back to RTD.
Thank you, Greg. Malcolm, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to compliment CEO Johnson for her attendance at these meetings. Obviously, you got some real big challenges to deal with. I appreciate your accountability and your continuing to come to these meetings. Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I agree. It's been nice having you here each week or each month without having to, multiple phone calls and outreach. So I appreciate that it's on your calendar. I think when I hear the communications department say there must have been some sort of miscommunication, I would have to say that's the theme since I've been on this board. I hope that we can get rid of that theme. Miscommunication or no communication really is the theme. And so I would have to imagine that no communication or complete miscommunication happened if City Council wasn't aware that that stop was going to end, because that doesn't make sense. Because if we would have heard of any of the municipalities in Adams County are obviously concerned because it's all of our residents that this impacts. And so I hope we can remedy that situation pretty quickly, because it is a very significant stop for our region to not be available. So I'm not going to continue on that because I think there's going to be work and hopefully some follow-up. So is there anything else from RTD that we needed, or are we ready to move on to CDOT?
Thanks. I think if you're okay, we'll move on so we have time for this presentation. It's a very important presentation and one I'm excited to bring forward. We have the people who know everything about 260 and the stimulus funds and the greenhouse gas rulemaking effort. And that's Jeff Sudmeyer, who's our CFO, and Rebecca White. You've heard from Rebecca before, and she's the director of the Division of Transportation Development. And I don't know how Rebecca does all the jobs that she does. She's on every call I've ever been on, and she has been presenting to DRCOG and to MAC and to all the other agencies in the Denver metro region about this presentation she's going to give us today. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jeff and Rebecca, and thank you both for being here. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. That was a wonderful introduction. Good morning, everyone. Karen mentioned this will be a bit of a tag team because Jeff Sudmeyer and I will take various parts of this. I also want to let you know that since Paul Jositis is on this morning, and some of the projects I'll speak to are the ones he's actually building, I will have him cover a couple slides as well. We got quite a bit to cover, so I do want to just dive into it. If you could go to the next slide. So I'll start out this morning and talk you through just where we are in terms of spending the dollars we've received and the path forward. And I have to say that's just an incredibly fortunate time at CDOT to finally have some transportation revenue and now some sustainable transportation revenue. But it has been a bit of a whirlwind of a year with COVID-19. Of course, we're not alone in going through that, but revenues have been a bit up and down. I'll walk you through that, but I think Jeff and I's eyes are on the future and being able to plan for what is really going to be a neat decade or so as we get some predictable transportation dollars in. Jeff will do a deep dive on Senate Bill 260 in particular, and hoping we have time, I will cover briefly the greenhouse gas rulemaking, which we've been spending a lot of time on as well. So if you go to the next slide, just to back up a minute. NATA knows well, because I think we presented many times that CDOT spent about a year and a half building our 10-year plan. This was an effort that we took across the state, met with all 64 counties. It was really about 100+ conversations and meetings we had. And we took that 10-year plan and really divided it into 2 chunks. At the time we wrote this, we had a pretty good confidence that we would receive 4 years of funding from the certificates of participation, the COPs provided to us from Senate Bill 267. So we had 4 years of quote kind of funded projects. And then because it's a planning document, we had another sort of 6 years of hoped for funding, that if we continue to receive dollars sort of on the order of the Senate Bill 267 level, those are the projects we would seek to deliver. The way we built these, in addition to the outreach, was also, if you go to slide 4, I'll just share with you the guiding principles that we developed both through talking to Coloradans across the state and kind of what was most important to them, but also what our Transportation Commission directed staff to do. So when we went out and narrowed the really probably 1,000 different project ideas we got, these are sort of the main criteria we use to funnel that list down to that 10-year list. And the commission reviews these principles about every couple of years. I expect they will take a look again as we have 3 new commissioners, but it really is a good set of principles that makes a lot of sense. I think a new dynamic now, of course, is the passage of Senate Bill 260 and some of the climate and greenhouse gas requirements that we'll have to look harder at as well. All right, so that's a bit of the background. If you go to slide 5, so just to touch on the past year, we were working our way through the 10-year list and had received the second tranche of Senate Bill 267, and then COVID arrived. And we had a really kind of a roller coaster year. I sometimes call this the talk therapy slide, because for a few months there, it looked like the bottom was falling out. We had some crisis meetings with the commission to figure out which projects we needed to scale back on. We weren't certain we would even get additional 267 revenues just because of the economy. And then largely the federal government and the state sort of came to the rescue and started allocating some stimulus dollars our way. So we went some sort of feast to famine over a very short period of time. But fortunately, because we had this 4-year list, we were able to just keep returning to it and picking projects off. But I will note that the main criteria that really did change, because these were stimulus dollars, is that they all needed to go to projects that were shovel ready. And some of the projects that we picked for the first 4 years were longer term, very expensive projects like Floyd Hill and I-270 that still require several years to get ready because of the environmental study and the contracting process. So some of what I'll talk to you today and have Paul Jositis help with is you'll see that we've had to pivot and pull some projects in from out years of the plan simply because they were shovel ready, and we had a pretty strong direction from the Transportation Commission, the legislature, and the federal government to really do all we could as CDOT to get dollars out to the economy. So we'll walk you through some projects here with Paul, but just to bring you up at where we are most recently. So just a few months ago, we received the third, so we're calling it 3B. So because of Senate Bill 260, it allocated a tranche of $170 million in Senate Bill 260 stimulus dollars for shovel-ready projects. We combined that with some additional premium that we'd received. I always like to give Jeff credit for this, but he says it's the economy. But we had that $53 million and $14 million in additional premium from Senate Bill 267. So altogether, it was about $238 million. So these are sort of the second tranche of dollars we've actually received just this year. They're in addition to that issuance of Senate Bill 267 year 3. And then just to further confuse you, we do anticipate getting that fourth year of Senate Bill 267 in 2022, which hopefully will be somewhere around $450 million. So we're in this sort of moment in time, and Senate Bill 260 is sort of arranged this way, where there's quite a bit of dollars sort of front loaded before we reach that more stable revenue at a lower level over time. If you go to slide 6, so what I'll have Paul talk to is the projects we picked this year, and those include these 3B projects. We selected 25 projects for that about $238 million. And I really think this is a pretty great list. Usually we dedicate about 10% of any funding we receive to transit. That's sort of been the way the dollars have come to us in the past. Well, Senate Bill 260 allowed us to think a little bit differently about that. And because of the new climate goals we have as well, this project list actually has about 20% of funding for transit and multimodal projects, and really just a lot of projects I think will really change the way people move, particularly in the north part of the metro area. As I mentioned before, this is a mix of projects from that first 4 years, as well as a couple projects that we pulled from out years in order to provide shovel-ready projects. This includes the Eisenhower Johnson Memorial Tunnel, which has become much more of an urgent situation in the last couple of years, as that 50-plus-year-old tunnel is really starting to show its age. So with that, I will have Paul kind of walk you quickly through these projects. I'm sort of cognizant of the time, and we'll transition into 260 as soon as we can. Paul, are you on? Do you want to just?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. Good
right.
Morning, everybody. You want to switch slide or? All right, so these are this slide shows Senate Bill 267 year 3 projects. So just a quick update on where we are there. So Floyd Hill, we should be releasing the EA imminently here in first weeks of August, along with RFPs for design and CMGC to get that project going. The next project down, West Metro Bridges. So in Region 1, we have about 53 bridges that in the next 10 years are going to need real major rehabs or full replacement, or we're going to be in a level of figuring out what we have to do. So one of those bridges is Ward Road, which is under design right now, $33.5 million. And this is a great list of multimodal projects, transit and highway projects. So the next one down, Idaho Springs Mobility Hub. We've been working with the city of Idaho Springs for several years now to build a mobility hub. We really have to look at all the different modes along the I-70 West corridor. We're not going to be able to just add lanes. It's not even a good idea. So one of the ways we're doing that, and I'll talk about a few other mobility type things we're doing in the corridor, that's what that is. We have other mobility hubs down on Interstate 25 and Lone Tree. We're working with them to do a mobility hub there. Then, of course, real important to all of you on this call, I-25 and State Highway 7. That first $1.5 million is just for design, so that's under design right now. It's a, it's a park and ride with bus shelters, Uber, Lyft, a bus staying stop, a pedestrian bridge over I-25 to create a initial phase of a mobility hub at that location. Working with Castle Rock to identify a location for a mobility hub down there. Interstate 270, that's a $500 to $600 million project. also very important to the group here. So right now we're in the environmental phase, pre-construction phase, and about 10% of $500 million, which is roughly what design costs, is about 50 million. So this is 30 million towards the design phase to get going on that project. Next slide. We have some Mustang fleet purchases that are being shared around all the different regions to replace the fleet, add to the fleet. We've got a Mustang heavy maintenance facility, $500,000 there. And then this year's 5 through 10 pre-construction. It's always fun when money drops from the sky and they tell you, can you get something advertised in 3 months? That's obviously very tough to do. So this is an effort to get a bunch of good projects in the what I would call shovel ready phase. So we're looking at more West Metro bridges. There's 17 bad bridges just on I-70 from roughly I-25 to about the Morrison exit that need replacement. So we're working on a bunch of those. And this is to add more design, have more ready to go as money becomes available. Kings Valley, just the site on 285 of multiple fatalities, multiple injuries. And we're going to be grade separating there to do something to help those people up there. That road becomes busier and busier as I-70 becomes more congested. We have a very robust bottleneck reduction program. This is where we really look at efficiencies on our highway system, and we design very low cost fixes to fix those little bottlenecks we drive through all day. Where every day, if you drive, you go, oh wow, could you guys just do something there, a little lane that would really help. And we've had great success increasing efficiency of our system for that. We've got wildlife crossings. We've got the US 85 corridor in Douglas County. We've got I-70 truck escape ramps. We had those 4 fatalities a couple years back. We really got to get an escape ramp built there. I-25 and State Highway 7 interim transit. We're calling it like starter transit. So we're going to be doing an intersection. Region 4 is doing an intersection on Highway 7 that really also could have some things like bus queue jumps and really just kind of do some jump start in that Highway 7 corridor. And that's where it really ties in well to the mobility hub at Highway 7 and I-25. We really need to look at that whole corridor, Boulder, Brighton as a unit and get some starter transit in there. So busy working on that. I-70 at Vasquez, Vasquez and 60th, I'm going to say. That's Commerce City location, really bad intersection. We're designing that. And we have some money for construction, but we're working hard to get that advertised in the next few years. Multiple grade separations for bike and pedestrian trails across the metro area. The I-70 climbing lane, that's adding a lane as you approach the tunnel. It gets really steep there and the trucks can't make it up the hill. So that's an operational improvement. And then Rebecca said, real huge need for EJ MT maintenance. And we go to the next slide and I'll talk a little bit more about that. All right, so the top line there, that is really Floyd Hill mitigation. So this big $450 million project with the environmental assessment coming out and getting ready to go into design. That is really to take those various dirt parking lots along the corridor, work with DTR and Mustang to establish, and microtransit in the corridor to establish better transit in the I-70 West corridor. The next one down, that's at 50 million. So we have a list of 150 million of critical deferred maintenance needs in the tunnel. This 50 million will really help us do things like seal the tunnel off. Right now, huge amounts of water are going in there, just damaging the tunnel. We're having frost heaves on the driving lanes in the tunnel. So just we're just really need to get some critical maintenance needs done to that tunnel. I-70 noise wall maintenance phase 3 to 6. So a bunch of the last remaining wooden noise walls across Region 1. These fall down regularly. We can't have walls falling down. The citizens in that area, it's an eyesore. They're very thankful that we're rebuilding the sound walls. Those of you who were around when we did segment 2 on I-25, we did the same kind of thing, worked with NATA and got some concrete noise walls to replace the wooden ones along that corridor. Same kind of thing. There's that I-25 and State Highway 7 interchange mobility hub, 12.5 million for construction of that hub. So once again, we're in design. We hope to get that under construction here in the next year or so, and working really, really hard to get something actually under construction there. Valley Highways phases 3 and 4, Burnham Yard. That's really just pre-construction to start scoping the project, start project coordination, and determine what the best steps forward for Burnham Yard are. And then Safer Main Streets, very popular program. We did a $77 million program in Region 1 and some projects in Region 4. And this is really just to increase the number of projects available to do in the future and really look at these urban arterials more holistically. How do we minimize the sort of barrier they are to pedestrians and bikes, that kind of thing, and improve safety. And then lastly, just some more bus staying fleet purchases. I don't know if we got one more slide there or not.
And I'm just going to make a quick announcement. We're going to push the GHG conversation in next month. So we're going to obviously go over for a few minutes. If everybody can just stay on, I think there's some good questions. I know Julie's got her hand up. So if we can just finish this part and then go into the questions.
All right, I'm done with my part, so I'll hand it back. Thank you.
Okay, I will just sort of close out this part of the presentation. We do have a lot of slides on Senate Bill 260. So I wonder if we might have to return on that topic as well. But just to finish out the planning presentation here. So the position we're in now is that because of the stimulus dollars, we have largely completed that first 4-year list I mentioned at the beginning, with the exception of I-270 and Floyd Hill, which are sort of noted for funding in that year 4 of Senate Bill 267. So that means we've got to pick a new 4-year list. We found that to be a really helpful timeline to have a prioritized list from our 10-year plan that focuses there so that Paul and his counterparts can do that pre-construction work and get projects ready. So we plan to spend a few months working on selecting these next 4 years of projects. My team's working out the details of that right now. And what we want to do is build a list around that 4th year of Senate Bill 267, as well as the first 3 years of Senate Bill 260 revenue that come in. So I'll be glad to come back to you all in the coming months to get your input and fill you in on this process. But do anticipate that's going to take many conversations. And fortunately, we've got a good list to draw from. But of course, we want to get some input on that. So Chair, recognizing it's 9 o'clock, did you want to take questions or do you want Jeff to go into Senate Bill 260?
I think we're going to push the 260 to next month because that's going to probably require some pretty questions and answer time. So Julie has her hand up, and so let's just go to questions about this topic.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair. I have a quick question. So I'm looking through the projects that you guys just presented on, and one of the issues that I'm kind of concerned that didn't make this list is the safety issues off of I-25 and 84. So I'm just curious, what process did you guys use to evaluate these projects? Because I haven't seen the updated data for that I-25 and 84th issue, but there is an accident there every day, it seems like. So that has been going on for years. How is it that this project, if we're concerned about safety and we're actually weighing safety appropriately when we choose these projects, how did that not make it into the funding? How did that project not get funded? I think that's my main question when it comes to just kind of transparency of the process of how you chose these projects.
Good question. Paul, do you want to tag team a bit on this? You want me to take it or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question. Obviously in Region 1, we have a lot of priorities. I want to reassure you that we are still working on the I-25 84th, 104th project, which is really the area that we've seen the high number of crashes in. We've done a bunch of interim safety improvements in the corridor, looking at the signing, adding rumble strips, all those different kind of things we could do in the near term. And that was now come out of our safety audit that we did in the corridor. So right now where we are is we're working with RTD to figure out what could we do with the 84, Thornton Park and Ride, what's the best solution there. And really trying to understand if we could, that project was about a $260 million project. Could we make the cost of that project, could we really look at the scope and identify if there's a lower cost alternative that would still solve the problem in the corridor. So we're just still in process with that. And as we get closer, I'm sure we'll be coming to you all to update you on it.
Okay. Is there a way that you have provided to the public the transparency in your process and how you chose these projects? So, for example, like, do you rank them based off of, you showed the slide, with your priorities. Do you rank them based off of that? Like, how do we know how you chose these projects, and how do we know what other projects that we're interested in would rank in this process? So, I know that there seems to be more work that needs to be done on the I-25 and 84th project, which is surprising, being that this issue has been going on for several years. So I guess I'm just really frustrated with the fact that, this is a serious impact, not only on Thornton, but Federal Heights, Northland, Westminster. You're talking about every city in the north of Denver that has to deal with these ongoing safety concerns, this ongoing congestion that's caused by accidents in this area. And we have data to support that, and yet we don't seem to have the support from CDOT to come up with a solution. So I guess I'm more questioning the process, and how can I, as an elected official, get information about this process and how you guys chose these projects and where other issues may rank in this process. How can I find that information?
Well, if I may, we came to all of the 8 counties in Region 1 and across the state about 2 years ago, and we established our 10-year list. So that's our 10-year priority list. So this project is in years 5 through 10, and which of course was unfunded. So, and I'll let Rebecca chime in, but there was a project readiness issue there on this one. We also have similar safety concerns on the Interstate 270 corridor. So we are putting a lot of effort into that right now, and are going to hopefully deliver a project, as that one is a year 4 267 project. So with that project readiness, these kind of safety concerns are on most of our highways. So it is always a really tough decision for what we do. But the good news is 84th, 104th is in our 10-year plan, years 5 through 10.
Sure, and I'll just sort of add in on the transparency. Every step we take goes to our Transportation Commission, which is a 2-day full open public meeting. I've also been to NATA many times over the last couple of years, and I will come anytime you'll have me and talk about where we are and what we're looking at. We post everything on our website. We also have our State Transportation Advisory Committee. So we're, we have the information out there. If I can do a better job reaching out to folks, that's always good input for me to have. I think the real problem with I-25 is just right now it's a $260 million project. And with the money we've received in, we're not able to allocate that much to Region 1 in any given year. So as Paul mentioned, if we're able to find a way to deliver part of that project, about 100 million of it is the center loading bus station. Those are the kind of conversations we need to have to figure out if there's more we can do up there until we're able to come up with that full amount of money.
And I'll weigh in on this as well. So this is always at the forefront of what I talk about for Adams County portion of District 4. And there are a couple of complicating factors. One of those complicating factors in my mind is we don't have a clear plan for and a clear understanding of how much that's going to cost to make the improvements that are necessary. I think the next thing we need to do is have a meeting with the local governments and have our executive director there, hopefully Department of Transit and Rail, and maybe even RTD, to talk about what has to happen on I-25 at 84th to 104th in order to make these improvements work. And while Paul says that this is on the years 5 through 10, just because they're years 5 through 10, as you could see, doesn't mean they're relegated to years 5 through 10. It means that they're unfunded as yet, and we're looking to years 5 through 10 to fund this. I think that a conversation among all the stakeholders on I-25 has to happen sooner than later. And then we look to see how do we fund this. And I do believe that RTD has a portion of this that they need to come to the table with for that center loading platform. Now, that being said, there is an unsolicited proposal in front of HPTE that would make some improvements that might be partial funding to this, but those conversations need to be had. And I do have to say, Councilmember Mullica, that these projects don't just come out of the blue. They're in a list of projects, and we are looking to protect assets through this money that we got that we weren't expecting. We're looking to improve multimodal options that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We were looking to spread this money around. It's 238 million spread across the state. And so these projects were one that fit the categories that we could do quite a few things with this amount of money across the state. So that's how these projects got chosen. And we at the Transportation Commission work really hard to make sure equity is there in the state. And I think when you looked at those first guiding principles that the Transportation Commission came up with, we do look at those criteria to see if these kinds of things fit. This didn't just come out of nowhere, really. It's been a long term. And as Rebecca said, this is one pot of money, but there is more money coming to CDOT, and we are committed to doing the 10-year plan as expediently as we can in an effort that's equitable across the state. So really appreciate your question about I-25 and 84th, and I'd love to have another conversation about that with our executive director and others to look at how we can fix this problem. We've had a charrette that was an internal charrette that didn't come up with any definitive answers. And you know, Angie Drum from CDOT has come in front of many of you to talk about the safety issues and the amounts of things we're able to do, but short of putting some more money into this, those safety issues aren't going to be solved. We really do need to put our hats together and heads together to figure this out. You're right, every day. Thank you.
Every day, yes. And just for the record, Jessica Sangren and I actually went down and had a conversation with Paul and the executive director. So it's not like this is a new issue. It's not like you haven't received community, input on this issue prior. So I think it is just kind of frustrating with this process, seeing it getting kicked down the road longer and longer, and seeing how many people are actually injured and hurt and the property damage done by this section of the highway. I am just blown away that it's not prioritized higher. So I look forward to those further conversations. Thanks.
And thank you, Julie, for bringing that up. And so maybe we can bring that up at an AdCog meeting coming up just for the region to talk about as a whole, since the county is there as well, and look at how we can prioritize that. We are at 12 minutes after. Jean, I see your hand up. Is it a quick comment and questions? We're losing people kind of pretty quickly here.
This issue of I-25 84th, it's actually south of 84th. This goes all the way back to where you're having so many lanes coming in to a certain limited number of lanes. It's like a big bottleneck. And this is not new. I was talking to this about to CDOT 20 years ago. and there's never been enough money to really answer the question. My question to you is, are you thinking about, since this is unfunded, are you going to, any money that comes out of the infrastructure bill that Biden is providing, are you going to use any funding you get to advance these projects and get them going?
And so I think we need to have a further discussion on this, obviously, and there's a lot of questions around it, as we've heard. And so again, people are dropping off. I know we have a lot of us have other meetings that we need to get to if we're not already late. So maybe we can note Jean's questions and Julie's questions, and then put those on an agenda for the next meeting, at least talk about it at the SPC. So I think with that, we need to probably end this meeting. We are about 15 minutes over. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around. And I don't think this topic is over, and it's a very important topic to our whole area. And so we'll see you guys next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.